Hi, I'm Lori Owsley from Gardens Buffalo Niagara, and today we're going to speak with Burney of the Pollinator Conservation Association down on Buffalo's waterfront. Many of us plant for pollinators in our gardens, and we think about the flowers and plants that they need in order to attract them to our gardens. But today we're going to learn more about the larger context for our gardening for pollinators in the Western New York region.
Hey, I'm Burney, and I'm at Buffalo Harbor State Park on Buffalo's Outer Harbor. This is a pollinator conservation site that's brought to you by the Niagara River Greenway and the Pollinator Conservation Association. So on Buffalo's Outer Harbor, it's mostly human-made landscapes. However, once upon a time, this was a vast marsh and dune complex that stretched from Hamburg Cliffs all the way to Grand Island. And so what we're trying to do here is bring back some of that habitat, both of the biodiversity that used to be here, that still remains here in some places and should be here. We're also creating an aesthetic, which is like a beach aesthetic. So some of this sand involves a beach path so that you feel like you're walking on a coastline rather than you're walking in a landscape lawn and parking lot. We're trying to bring back nature so that we can all enjoy being outdoors and understand what it's like to be on a coastline. When we do conservation planting, one of the first things we think about is why are we doing it? What are we targeting? What kind of species? And we use native plants to build an ecosystem. We also try to understand what the native pollinators are and what else is there that we want to attract. Native pollinators are kind of a gateway, a lens, if you will, to conservation. And so we think of all sorts of things like birds, other insects that are beneficial besides pollinators, and other animals. What we have here is a place that attracts both native butterflies, bunches of them, native bees, and many birds. Still relatively early in the season. We have a lot of fall blossoming plants here, but behind us we have some native grasses. This is called marram grass, which is the typical native sand dune grass. Over here we have a meadow, which is more like a prairie meadow, and it's not necessarily typical of what you find on the waterfront, but it's a great place to take a grassy area. It's going to be blossoming like crazy in July and August with goldenrods and asters and milkweeds, and it's going to be beautiful down here. Right now it looks like there's just a lot of grass. Those aren't weeds, those are native grasses, and they're providing great habitat for pollinators and birds. We're here at a site, and we're glad to be working with the Western New York Native Plant Collaborative and Gardens Buffalo Niagara. We'd like you to all come down to our site and see what a beautiful place we've established down in Buffalo's Outer Harbor. This is another Pollinator Conservation Association site that we've been working in. It's more of a grassland prairie area. There's a lot of beautiful blossoms here. We have sunflowers and black-eyed Susans and yarrow and asters. We have a lot of birds here that we try to protect. We're in the middle of something called the Niagara River globally significant important bird area. And it's important because we have birds from all over the hemisphere and maybe globally that come here. For instance, we have a lot of swallows. We have 7 species of swallows that nest here in the summertime, including purple martins. They winter in the Amazon basin and they breed here. Last summer we counted at least 5,000 baby swallows of 5 different kinds on the Outer Harbor alone. If you think about conservation, often you think about save the Amazon. Hey, one of the ways we save the Amazon is by protecting the birds that live there, that breed here, that live there in the winter and breed here. We also have a connection to the Arctic. In the wintertime we have birds that come from the Arctic, everything from snowy owls to waterfowl, and they spend their winters here. This is like the Miami of the South for so many species of birds. And conservation, save the Arctic, save Western New York, save Buffalo, do conservation here. We can do things here in your backyard. Planting one native plant is better than having no native plants. If you take half of your backyard or a quarter of your backyard and plant native plants, it all contributes to the health of the planet, to the health of humans, and to the health of biodiversity, which is what makes the planet work. Basically, if you like chickadees, a pair of chickadees with 2 young require a lot of insects to eat. And so as many as 4,000 a week, and over a 6-week period, that adds up to quite a lot of insects. If you have native plants in your yard, you have a better chance of growing those insects or those caterpillars for the chickadees than if you don't have native plants. There's a tree called a callipy pear that hardly has any native insects on it, as opposed to an oak tree, which could have as many as 600 species of insects that have caterpillars, and maybe as many as 10,000 caterpillars in one single tree. So native plants are really important if you want to care about biodiversity, care about birds, and care about pollinators. It takes a lot to feed a nest of chickadees.
Right.
Well, it's important to know that when we look at conservation, we try to figure out what it is that's important to make biodiversity work in our region. You can do that in your own yard as well as in a larger area like this. In your own yard, you have to think about what kinds of things you want to attract. If you want to attract pollinators, what kind? Monarch butterflies are very popular and very important to work with now because they're heading towards maybe endangered species list. You can work in your own backyard, your own front yard, to plant for monarch butterflies. We do that here. We plant for a number of different things. The first thing we think about, though, is what is it we're trying to do and why are we trying to do it, and then how do we do it. So if you have a garden, you have a yard, you can create a conservation area for pollinators, even if it's a couple of plants.